Her father forbade their love until Julius did something shocking to save the family business. Julius's day was as ordinary as ever, walking through the crowded hallway of his college, lost in thought about his upcoming exams. The vibrant energy of students rushing to classes filled the air. Just as he was about to make his way down a familiar corridor, a voice called his name. Turning to see who it was, he kept walking and didn't notice the petite figure in front of him until it was too late. With a soft thud, he bumped into a young woman, sending the stack of books she was holding tumbling to the ground. "I'm so sorry." Julius bent down quickly to help her pick up the scattered books. As their hands touched while reaching for the same book, he froze. The touch was gentle, and when he looked up, their eyes met. For a moment, the busy hallway faded away. She had the most beautiful, almond-shaped brown eyes that seemed to captivate him. Julius was lost for words, his mind unable to form coherent thoughts. He stared into her eyes and smiled, his heart fluttering in a way he hadn't expected. "I'm really sorry," he managed to say, finally pulling himself out of the trance. "I didn't mean to bump into you." The young woman smiled softly and said, "It's okay." She took the books from his hands and walked away, her long, silky hair flowing behind her. Julius stood there, watching her disappear into the crowd. It wasn't until a friend tapped him on the shoulder that he realized he was supposed to meet someone who had called him earlier. Still, his mind kept replaying the moment over and over. Who was she? He hadn't even gotten her name. 2 days later, Julius was leaving class and heading to the parking lot when he saw her again. This time, he wasn't going to miss his chance. He walked up to her, nervous but determined. "Hi, do you remember me? I'm Julius. We bumped into each other the other day." The girl shyly smiled and nodded. She was just as beautiful as he remembered, her delicate features framed by her black hair. "Yeah, I remember. I'm Connie," she said quietly, barely meeting his gaze. Julia smiled. "Connie, it's nice to officially meet you. Do you think maybe we could hang out sometime, grab a coffee?" Connie hesitated, her smile faltering slightly. "I don't know. I'm kind of busy with school," she replied, her voice soft. Julius nodded understandingly. She gave him her phone number so they could talk, but every time he asked her out on a date, she always seemed to have an excuse. The only time they spent together was during lunch in the college cafeteria, and even then, she was reserved, never opening up about her life. She wouldn't let him give her a ride home or even tell him where she lived. He respected her boundaries, but was curious about what was holding her back. One weekend, Julius was driving through the city when something caught his eye. Connie entering a small Chinese restaurant. Intrigued, he found a parking spot and walked into the restaurant. It was a quiet place with only a few customers scattered across the tables. Julius scanned the room but didn't see Connie. Feeling his stomach rumble, he decided to sit down and order something to eat. As he looked over the menu, a familiar voice asked, "How may I help you today, sir?" He looked up and was surprised to see Connie standing in front of him holding a notepad. She seemed just as shocked to see him. "Connie, you work here?" Julius asked. Connie glanced nervously behind her and gestured towards an older man standing behind the counter. "That's my father," she whispered. "I can't talk right now." Julius nodded understandingly. He didn't want to get her into trouble, but he was curious. As he sat there eating, he couldn't help but notice that the restaurant seemed unstaffed, with only Connie, her parents, and two other workers. They didn't have much customers, and Connie seemed to be helping out after school. It piqued his interest, but he didn't press her for details. Over time, Julius and Connie grew closer, and she started opening up to him, though they could only go out on dates sporadically. One day, while he was at the restaurant, sitting and sipping a drink, Mr. Cheng, Connie's father, approached him. "I'm Mr. Cheng," he said, his voice gruff. "Stay away from Connie." Before Julius could respond, Mr. Cheng turned to walk away. In his haste, a folder he was holding slipped from his hand, spilling envelopes onto the floor. Julius bent down to help him, his eyes catching the bold red past due stamps on each envelope. His heart sank, but he said nothing as Mr. Cheng gathered the papers and left. That night, Julius called Connie. "I saw the envelopes," he said gently. "What's going on?" Connie hesitated, her voice shaky as she spoke. It's a restaurant. We never recovered after the pandemic. We had to let go of most of our staff. Bills kept piling up, and the banks won't give us a loan. If things don't get better, I might have to drop out of school to help my parents." Julius's heart ached for her. "I can't let that happen," he said. "How much do you need?" Connie was shocked. "Why are you asking? You can't." Julius interrupted her gently. "You don't know this about me, but my family is wealthy. I don't show it, but we can help. Find out how much you need." In the days that followed, Connie reluctantly told Julius the amount her family needed to save the restaurant. Julius approached his parents with the situation, and they agreed to help out, but only as an investment. They owned a successful marketing and promotions business, and Julius knew they could turn the restaurant's fortunes around. When the time was right, Julius approached Mr. Cheng with the proposal, but Mr. Cheng was furious when Julius mentioned the envelopes. "Stay out of my business," Mr. Cheng shouted, throwing Julius out of the restaurant. A week later, Mr. Cheng agreed to meet with Julius's family. After long discussions, Mr. Cheng finally saw the potential and accepted their help. With his family's marketing expertise, the restaurant's business picked up, and they were able to hire more staff. Connie was relieved to be able to stay in college, and her father, seeing how much Julius cared for her, finally gave them his blessing.